I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Lake Mills City Council for December 5th of 2023. Misty, can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Curler?
Here.
Mr. Waters?
Here.
Ms. Quidnow?
Here.
Mr. Fields? Mr. Fields?
I can see that he's online, but his sound may not be working.
Can he wave at you?
I do see him, but I have not heard anything.
He did
Mr.
wave.
Fields. And Mrs. Bishop previously informed staff that she would be unavailable for this evening's meeting.
Okay, thank you. We'll probably need to try to get Mr. Field's sound working so he can participate, but we can certainly see him on the Zoom. Okay, we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item number 4 is a council member board reports and acceptance of meeting minutes. We have several meeting minutes to accept tonight. The City Council meeting minutes from November 21st, Plan Commission from October 24th, Parks Board from October 18th, and Police and Fire Commission from September 21st. Are there any corrections or comments on any of those sets of minutes? Mr. Waters.
No corrections, but again, thank you to the Parks Board for their wonderful minutes, and it was very nice to be able to read that.
Great. Okay. Not seeing any other comments or corrections, so we'll accept that list of minutes into the public record. The next item on our agenda, number 5, is a Parks Board progress report on the Mill Pond resolution. And I think we have a copy of the original resolution that we adopted is attached to our agenda, and we have our Parks Board Chair Tim Sprecher here to give us his report. Tim, you want to come up to the podium?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I am going to give a quick background of where we are to date regarding Resolution 23-41A, which is the charge for the Parks Board to make recommendations concerning the citizen and city goals for the use and maintenance of preservation of the mill pond. The mill pond is one of the many
Tim,
gems.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? I'm not sure if your microphone is on. Is there a green light? It
It's
is?
green.
Okay, great.
I'll try to speak to the.
Sorry for interrupting.
No worries. So we are, at this point, the Parks Board has been doing some background in the history of the mill pond. That is a work in progress. We've looked at the recommendation that was formulated for the City Council, I believe, in 2017. And we've looked at the different options that are there. We've had input from citizenry regarding the uses of the mill pond, the expectations of uses for the mill pond, which is access to the lake for boaters and fishing and nature walks and all those sorts of things. We've also had input for the history of it as it being built as a mill pond for power, and over the years it's been dredged. To our knowledge, it's been done once. But now we're charged with trying to find out what is our next best things when it either comes to dredging or what the options are. So that's a little bit of the background, the short story of the mill pond. What we've done to date is we have, besides reading the report, we've had input from Patricia Cicero from the Jefferson County as to the water quality of the mill pond and some of the effects and what the research has been. We are also in the process of having someone from the Department of Natural Resources present to us regarding the flora and fauna of the part. It's been a challenge trying to get them to be able to come and present to the board, but we have done a lot of our own research, and that has been put into the minutes, which I think most of you have read. So the plan going forward, and this came from some excellent counsel and input from Drake Daly and from Dan and from you as to where it's going to chunk this out, and the process and the plan is in our charges we want to give you a report in 6 months. So right now our plan is in December 20th we'll have a public presentation of the history of the mill pond, past, present, and future, use and access, and that will be done by Eric Schneider. He's working on that now. And we also just found out today that one of our, Hope Ostick, has a number of pictures of the mill pond, which will also be presented in the 20th as sort of an overlay of the history of the mill pond and the uses. So that is going to be part of the presentation will be the old, the present, and then the future. So we'll talk about all the costs of dredging and the access options. We'll also, at that point, talk about the future. Actually, Eric talked to the fire department, and they are very interested in access to the lake, direct access. And there's more details to that, but basically it will cut response time, safety response time in half, plus all the other maintenance things. So they're very interested in working with the Parks Board, but also the City Council, and pursuing options for making more inconsistent lake access. So that's December 20th. On January 17th, we are planning on a public comment meeting, which to my understanding will be in this chamber, and we will elicit all the comments that people have and the different needs. And I'm sure you're all aware that there's varied amounts. Some people want a direct access to the downtown. Some want to leave it as it is. It keeps it more private, all sorts of things. But that will be brought in January 17th. Using the comments from the 17th, on the 21st of February, the Parks Board will work on next steps based on the public comments, saying what we need to get more research on, what decisions we can be made at that time, or if we need to do more research and get more input. But that, at this point, is the very high level of where the Parks Board is, and we are planning on continuing on just reiterations of here's our findings, here's our ideas, and then try to narrow it down to make a presentation to you that could be motioned and accepted. But I think we're making assumptions that everyone has read, at least on the Parks Board, we've all read the reports, and we have all read the ongoing minutes and such. So that's a high-level report from the Parks Board.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Sprecher?
No, but thank you for those. Those minutes are wonderful, so it does help us to understand what's going on. At the Parks
We
Board.
appreciate that. Yeah, Mike
So
works
you
very,
talked
very
about-
hard with that. Yes, thank you.
Some of the things you talked about were already outlined in some of those minutes. So it's
That's our hope, and we thank you for reading them. Yeah, so.
I want to express my appreciation both for you coming tonight and also the public comment meeting. I'm glad to hear that's going to be in here, and does it look like that will be able to be recorded as well so people can watch it later? Drake, do you know?
I believe that's the intent.
Okay, fantastic. So if people aren't able to attend, they can also still listen and learn and
Yes.
follow along.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, our next agenda item number 6 is correspondence. Mr. Waters, I'll start with you tonight.
Only two. Of course, a note from a township representative asking the or making some statements, I guess, about the ladder truck that'll be on our agenda later on tonight. And then I had a call from a resident thanking us for lowering the tax levy by 5.5%, but then they wondered why is that tax levy going up 4.5% with the other municipalities? And I really didn't have an answer for them at that time, but need to do more research and find out why that's happening.
Thank you. Ms. Quidnow.
I also had the correspondence from the township representative about the ladder truck, as well as an invitation to Mr. Frisch's funeral or his memorial service. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend, but I was thankful for the opportunity to go if I could have gone. Other than that, it was just normal correspondence from the library board.
Thank you. Mr. Fields, let's see if your sound is working now.
All right. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
All right. I just had most of the same emails, a letter from the Joint Rock Lake Committee offering to continue assisting us. The notice about Doug Fritch's memorial. I also was unable to attend on short notice like that, but sorry to hear that, and I enjoyed serving with him in the past. And then the email on the ladder trucks also. That was it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we can hear you now, so that's wonderful. I received all the same contacts and correspondence that others have mentioned. I also received a call about why the library was closed on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and I referred that caller to Mr. Saylor and the library board. Call about when is the city going to do something with the Century property, which I had a nice conversation with that constituent, and received an email about the Mill Pond and the offer to provide historic photos, an email asking me to meet about a possible lake management district. And then I did have an opportunity to attend the Legendary Lake Mills monthly board meeting, as well as the memorial service for Doug, for which I attended. I know Mr. Daly was there and Mr. Wilkie as well. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is questions and public comment. The public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Public comments may also be made at this time on items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state's open meetings law discourages actions by the council on items that are not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes and state your name and address when starting your comments, and fill out the sign-in sheet provided at the podium. For anyone attending online who wants to speak, please type your name and address in the chat feature. So I don't see anyone here in the room. Is there anyone online who would like to speak tonight?
Hi, Lisa. Tom Biko, North 6617 Short Hills Road, Lake Mills, Wisconsin. Just quickly, I think you received my quick correspondence on the ladder truck late this afternoon. Apologize for that. Essentially, I'm not going to elaborate on it. You're more than welcome to later on when you discuss it. But I just want to make mention that I know at least our town board, I'm not sure about the other town boards, have not had any chance to weigh in on a massive expenditure that, you know, potentially could affect the townships with their fire bills. I'm hopeful in the future that there's going to be better communication on this, and obviously communities working together. But there are other communities that do have ladder trucks close by. I don't think everybody needs a ladder truck. You know, it's a massive expenditure, and for the use that it gets, I just don't think, I mean, we're not a big major municipality. You know, nor do we have a full-time staff that can appropriately be trained as such to be really effective with the use of the high technology in these things. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Beekle. Any questions for Mr. Beekle? Okay, thank you for joining us. Is there anyone else who wishes to provide public comment tonight? Okay, last call. Anyone wish to speak to the council this evening? Okay, thank you. We'll close the public comment period, and we will move on to agenda item number 8, which is the city manager's report.
The only thing to report tonight is our first meeting of the ad hoc committee on the urban forest management is next week on the 13th at 6 o'clock. We'll be here at City Hall.
That's a Wednesday, right? Wednesday the 13th at 6 p.m. Do you know what room that will be in by any chance?
I believe the community room.
So downstairs, okay. Great, thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Okay, then we'll move on to council business. Our first item, letter A, is Resolution 23-74, and that item is currently tabled. Is there a motion to remove that item from the table?
Motion to remove Resolution 23-74 from the table.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Quednow. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, so we can pick up our discussion of this. Is there any new information, Mr. Daly, that you would like to add to our previous discussions?
Sure. I reached out to Tom at the Humane Society. There was a question last time about the Safe Keep program. In 2023, so far there was one individual from Lake Mills that took advantage of that. There's one in 2022 and then 2 in 2021. Asked about if they accounted for specifics of what the city's contribution goes towards in their budget, and as we expected, it's considered a revenue into their organization, so they don't account for each municipality and what each what specific portion of that goes to what specific service that they provide. They don't have a surrender fee for their municipalities. They do pass on if there's a running at large, animal at large fee. Ours is I believe it's $25 for first offense and then $50 for a second offense. And then if they're not up on their licenses, for example, a dog is $10 license for a altered animal and $15 for an unaltered animal, that has to be brought. They have to pay those fees before the animal can be returned. And then those fees are forwarded. They are forwarded to the city. So we do receive those funds back to us. He followed up with me some more today that they don't take a cut of any of those fees. They are all sent back to us. They offered to provide volunteer testimony who are also residents of the city of Lake Mills for the services that they provide, and would also offered to make available their annual report. And then they noted that the increase was a 3.7% increase, whereas they had a weighted increase based on CPI, which would have been closer to 14%. And then they also indicated that they would welcome anyone from the city who would like to attend their annual meeting, which is held every April.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Is there any discussion? Mr. Waters.
Mr. Daly, I think he also noted that there was a monthly report given to municipalities. Are we currently getting that?
We are. So it's going directly to the straight to the accounting department, who takes in the revenue. It simply states how many animals were, interacted with, and the revenue that comes with. So if there were 2 animals that were at large and they each paid $50 for the animal at large fee, then they show us that there were 2 and that they send the $100 with that report. So it's going directly to our accounting staff.
Continue.
I did follow up with an email to the executive director, basically asking about how many animals to understand those numbers. And his response indicated that it was the 50 animals that we're looking at for an annual basis out of Lake Mills. He also clarified that there were 4 of the strays were reclaimed this year, which I believe there was 26 strays, so 4 of them were reclaimed. Last year, there was also 4 that were reclaimed, and in 2021, 5 were reclaimed. And that's about all that was in that correspondence. Just to clarify some things.
Thank you. Mr. Waters, oh, go ahead.
And I also did check with a local township to see if they are also being charged through a contract similar to what we have, and they are as well being, they do have a similar contract to what we have as well.
And a similar per capita fee kind of
Yes.
structure? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
I had just a follow-up question for Mr. Daly or any of my fellow council members. I'm still kind of unclear about the assertion in some of the correspondence we received about that if we adjusted our license fees, that somehow might affect the results, and I think it had to do with the number of strays that would be reclaimed, the fees that someone has to pay to get their animal back, so to speak. Can you clarify what they're meaning there, or what actions we could take? I don't know that it actually has any bearing on the cost of the contract, but.
The license fees are not exorbitant, the $10 and $15 fee for an altered or unaltered for a dog. Is it the same for a cat?
Cats are $10.
Okay, cats are
Either
$10
way, yeah.
even. So those I would imagine don't have a significant impact on whether to reclaim. It's possible. The running at large fee of $50 that's the larger of them, and that's for the second offense. The first offense is the 25. Well, I guess we would have to balance whether that is deterring people from reclaiming their animal from the Humane Society versus the negative impact that an animal running at large may have on the community.
Thank you. Mr. Waters.
Is there any additional fees, like transportation fees or anything like that, or is it just the $25 or $50 fee for municipality?
I'm not aware that we charge for the transportation of them. The police department just drops them off at the Humane Society often. I don't believe we're charging directly for that cost,
Okay.
at least not to my knowledge.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm still kind of confused on why out of 26, only 4 were reclaimed. So where did those other 22 animals go? I mean, I guess they were really strays, but there were owners that were associated to them at one time, so.
And I don't know how successful they may have been at finding or contacting who the previous owner was, if they're microchipped or they had identification, or so it may be that, I don't know.
So maybe this is a commercial for microchipping, I don't know. But, okay. What was that, Sam?
I said I do it, and it works great.
Okay. All right.
Is there any further discussion on this item? People have any comments that people want to make before we go to a roll call vote? Okay, we have a prepared resolution, 23-74, which is the agreement with the Humane Society of Jefferson County. Hearing no further requests for discussion, we'll move to a roll call vote on Resolution 23-74, 2024 Jefferson County Humane Society contract.
I just want to confirm, I've got the motion to take it off the table, but do we need a new motion?
Thank you, you're right, thank you. Okay, so we need a motion to approve Resolution 23-74.
I move to approve Resolution 23-74, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement between the City of Lake Mills and Humane Society of Jefferson County.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Quidnow, seconded by Mr. Fields. Is there any further discussion? Okay, if not, can we have a roll call vote on Resolution 23-74?
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, our next item, letter B, is Resolution 23-78, reduction in financial guarantee for North Oak Townhomes. This is also currently tabled, so can we have a motion to remove this from the table?
I motion to remove from table Resolution 23-78, reduction of financial guarantee, North Oak Townhomes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Quidnow to remove Resolution 23-78 from the table. We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, so I don't do that again. Can we have a motion to approve Resolution 23-78?
I move to approve Resolution 23-78, North Oak Townhomes, second reduction of financial guarantee.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Quidnow, seconded by Mr. Waters. So is there any update from staff on this item that we discussed at our last meeting?
Yeah, the resolution that was before you at the last meeting had a couple of Scrivener's errors with regards to the numbering of the document, and then there was still some acceptance language regarding acceptance of dedication of public infrastructure that was intended to have been removed. The resolution in front of you is limited in scope to a second reduction of the financial guarantee to the limit under which they're allowed in the development agreement. I believe that acceptance of the public infrastructure, of dedication of the public infrastructure, will come soon. But there's still kind of those same lingering issues, the landscaping, the curb stops, and just making sure that the public infrastructure that we're accepting is in, proper form at the time that we accept it to start that warranty period. I think this project is kind of rounding out, and the product itself is looking pretty good. They're tightening up their compliance with the site plan, and I think they're looking for more occupancy coming in this month. So at this point in time, it's my opinion that the second reduction of the financial guarantee is appropriate, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Waters?
Quickie. When I drove down and took a look at it, is that site going to be curbed? You mentioned curb stops. I didn't know if the...
Interior, I don't believe there's any curb, and we're not accepting, that's not our public right-of-way interior in the development. There is some infrastructure underground, but that's not our roadway specifically. Outside of that, the public right-of-way, that is Main Street Highway 89, that is built to city standards and yes, will be curbed. There has not been sidewalk extended the full length yet, but that's coming with the TAP grant program that will be initiated early next spring as well.
So does that mean snow removal is not our responsibility then?
Not within the interior of the development, no.
Okay. All right.
Good question.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yep.
Any other questions for staff or discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, let's move to a roll call vote on Resolution 23-78, which is the reduction of financial guarantee for North Oak Townhomes.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Fields.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, on to agenda letter C, Resolution 23-82, which is a conditional use permit for 349 South Ferry Drive. Misty, can you read that title for us, please?
City of Lake Mills Resolution 23-82, conditional use permit declarations and findings, grading, filling, and excavating on a slope greater than 20% within 300 feet of the ordinary high water mark of Rock Lake for the purpose of constructing a new home, 349 South Ferry Drive, parcel number 246-0713-1414031.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 23-82, conditional use permit for 349 South Ferry Drive.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Quidnow. I see we have our zoning administrator, Mr. Evenson, at the podium. Would you like to tell us about this project?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. As Misty just read, the property owners, Barb and Greg, I think they're online there, are petitioning for a conditional use for grading and excavating within 300 feet of the overall high water mark. I'm sure you guys kind of looked through my memo and their notes and saw what they're up against. The grading on that property from the north to the south, there's a pretty good slope, and their intentions are to regrade most of that parcel to get it flat, obviously for building a new home and then for putting sod and then a vegetation buffer near the shoreline. Their whole intention is to, obviously, they want to have a walkout basement, but to try to improve that storm water from their neighbors to the north to them to the south neighbors. And they're going to spend the money to put retaining walls in on both the north and the south side to kind of capture their property and maintain their storm water and be able to allow them to build on that site. And they've done everything I think that we've asked. The staff doesn't have any issues with this. I think it's kind of a give and take. There's one mature tree that is in the shoreline area that is ultimately going to get removed, but I think the end product that we're going to end up with is going to be a healthier shoreline there, and they are going to be replanting a tree to a hardwood to try to simulate the one they're taking out.
Any questions for Troy? Okay, and then I'll just add that the Plan Commission recommended approval of this. I think we have their recommendation in our documents. There was a public hearing that was held on it, and there was no comments other than the property owner.
Correct.
Okay, no questions or discussion? Okay, well then let's move to a roll call vote on Resolution 23-82, which is a conditional use permit for 349 South Ferry Drive.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Fields,
Aye.
Ms. Curler.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, thank you, and best wishes with your project.
Congratulations.
Okay, our next item, letter D, is Resolution 23-83, which is a Jefferson County 911 Joint Powers Agreement. Misty, would you read that title, please?
Resolution 23-83, Joint Powers Agreement, County 911 Emergency System.
Could I have a motion?
Move to approve Resolution 23-83, Joint Powers Agreement, County 911 Emergency System.
Second.
Second.
Oh.
You can give Mr. Fields that one.
All right. Motion time is Quidnow, seconded by Mr. Fields. Staff?
The agreement's included in your packet. This is an annual approval, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions or discussion from the council? No? Okay, let's have a roll call vote then on Resolution 23-83, Jefferson County 911 Joint Powers Agreement.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Next item is letter E, Resolution 23-84, which is awarding a shared ride taxi service contract to Brown Cab Services. Misty, would you read that title for us?
Resolution 23-84, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement between the City of Lake Mills and Brown Cab Service, Inc. for mass transit services.
Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 23-84, award of shared ride taxi service contract with Brown Cab Services.
Giving
Second.
you an
Motion by
opportunity there,
Mr. Waters, seconded by Mr. Fields. Any staff discussion? I see we have a memo from Misty.
This is the shared ride taxi service agreement. We put it out for RFP. This is the first time since I've been clerk, or I believe since I've been with the city, that there's been more than one proposal that came back. We do have an evaluation committee. We met and went through the process. The vendor score results came back that Brown Cab was definitely higher at 94 points total over Freedom Vans, who came in at 59. So this is authorizing the city manager to sign the contract with Brown Cab for shared ride taxi services. It's a 2-year contract with 3 option years after that.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for all the supporting documentation that you provided. Are there any questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote on Resolution 23-84, which is an award of the share ride taxi service contract to Brown Cab Services.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Our next item is letter F, which is a discussion decision on the approval of the Catalis assessment contract for annual assessment services. So we don't have a prepared motion here.
Can we go to discussion first?
Sure, yeah, let's have Sam and Drake, you want to tell us about this?
Sure. So
Item.
these next 2 items go a little bit hand in hand. So this first one is an extension of our agreement with Catalis, formerly Grota, for our assessment contract for annual assessment services. So that's our normal maintenance. So the office hours that they hold, the scheduling and holding of the open book period, attendance at the board of review, and then updating the roles based on events, so sales, build permits pulled, things of that nature. Our current contract ends at the end of next year. This is an extension that would take it through 2027, and that will line up with the next contract, which is for the full reevaluation. So it would essentially make it so that we continue to receive the annual assessment services while paying for the reevaluation over time. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but if we don't, if the council doesn't intend to move forward with a reevaluation, then we don't need to extend the contract with Catalis because we have the annual maintenance through next year. With that being said, we were out of compliance this past year for the required ratio of assessed value to equalized value. You have to be in compliance once out of every 4 years. They are booked solid and can't do one until 2025. So we anticipate we will be out of compliance next year as well. So that would be 2, and we're not going to get back into compliance without doing a reevaluation, which hasn't been done in many, many years. So
Do you know how many years?
I think 2011, over 10 years.
Wow, okay.
So this first item is to approve the, authorizing the city managers to execute a contract for the annual services.
Correct.
And then the next agenda item would be related to the contract for revaluation.
That's correct.
Okay, so if someone would like to make a motion, I think it would just be to authorize the city manager to execute this contract. Is that
Can I
correct?
ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Awesome, thank you. Did we have any other competing bids on this? How would we go about evaluating that?
We did not go out to RFP for assessment services. We have been pleased with the services they've provided. They did offer we reached out to them and asked for a price reduction for paying it in full in January of each year on our contract, which they did acquiesce to. And we thought that because we'll be undertaking a reevaluation and Catalis / Grota has the experience with the city, that for that undertaking, we would want to take advantage of that experience while they're undertaking that effort, since that's a much more involved process for the full reevaluation than just an annual maintenance.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, so again, we need, in order to vote on this, we would need a motion. I guess it could simply be to approve the contract or authorize the city manager to execute the contract. Someone like to make a motion?
Sorry, one
I'll
second.
move to approve.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
I'll move to approve the contract extension for the assessment contract.
So you're giving the city manager authority to act?
Correct.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fields, seconded by Ms. Quidnow to authorize the city manager to execute the contract for annual assessment services. Is there any further discussion? Okay, can we have a roll call vote on this item?
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
No.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Fields.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1.
Okay, thank you. So our next item, letter G, is a discussion and decision on approval of a Catalis / Grota assessment contract for full revaluation. So you touched on this briefly, Drake. So this is a second contract to hire Catalis to do our revaluation beginning in 2025.
That's correct. So the 2022 assessment, we fell to 81.49%, the ratio to the equalized value, where you need to be within 90 to 110% to be compliant. The reason a reevaluation, it hasn't been done since 2011, and so what that can result in is that certain neighborhoods, certain property types may be bearing an unequal, a disproportionate share of the property tax burden because it's going to be largely reflected on recent transactions, newer construction, things that a qualifying event has occurred for. If a qualifying event hasn't occurred, then that assessment stays largely flat, much flatter than a qualifying event would necessitate. And so the goal of a reevaluation is that the values assigned to properties are uniform, equitable, and fair. The total cost of the contract over the 4 years is $164,600. It's paid annually. We did on this one ask as well for a reduction in the price, which they did agree to, if the full annual cost was paid in January of each year rather than monthly. So we'll have annual installments of $41,150 each year in January for the next 4 years. We do recommend approval of this contract, and then if the council does approve it, we'll be bringing forward either a budget amendment to use undesignated fund balance, or the option as well to use ARPA funds for the 2024 payment. Future payments we can discuss during the budgeting process, but this isn't something that we do every single year, and so incorporating it into the operating budget isn't strategically our best option, and utilizing one-time funds is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. So can we have, I think we can have some discussion and then have a motion, or we can have a motion and then have discussion before voting on this. Does anyone have any comments or questions they'd like to raise? Okay.
I'll move to give the city manager the authority to contract with Catalis for the assessment contract for a full reevaluation.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Quidnow, to authorize the city manager to enter into contract with Catalis for full reevaluation. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye,
Fields?
sorry.
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, the next agenda item is a discussion decision regarding authorizing the city manager to exit a purchase agreement for a ladder truck. Let's see, we do not have a prepared motion on this one, so let's go directly to staff comment on this, and then we'll take care of a motion as we go along. Good evening, Chief Russ.
I can, certainly. So what you see before you is, you see the letter from, is it Reliant, Chief, is that? Reliant for the pricing on a new ladder truck. You'll notice that the amount in the agenda item, the not to exceed amount, is $25,000 more than the cost of the ladder truck. That is to account for the identifying features, so lettering, as well as equipping the truck with the radio system that the fire department utilizes so that they can communicate during calls on the way to the call. The current ladder truck is over 30 years old now. I believe it's a 1987 that the city bought used from the Baraboo Fire Department in the 1990s. It is no longer in compliance with NFPA standards. That is 20 years, so we have exceeded that. The largest concern with it is the radiator is having difficulties. Replacement of that would be a custom job. We can't fix it with stock parts, and so the vehicle is showing its age. I did include an analysis of the city's debt kind of picture, and I did include in there as well a section or a line item for a potential library project, just so that the city council sees what that the future looks like around these two items that the city council has heard about recently. In relation to the townships, there is they currently contribute $100,000 to the city's fire department capital budget, which is for the 2004 refinancing of bonds related to the fire station. The final principal and interest payments on that are in 2024. And payments on the ladder truck would not begin until 2025. So I do believe that that there'd be minimal impact to an increase in, there may not be a decrease, but that $100,000 could continue to contribute to a capital expenditure. Chief and I have been trying to find a used option. We have not been successful. And we have also had conversations with neighboring communities about a cost share, an equipment share, some sort of agreement that we both can utilize the ladder truck. Those conversations are not progressing quickly, and the ladder truck expenditure is imminent. So we intend to continue those conversations with communities that are intending to purchase their own ladder truck in the future, and hopefully come up with a way to be more efficient and regionalize that service. But the city of Lake Mills does need a ladder truck, and Chief can speak more to this, for a certain rating that we receive because of the types of buildings that we do have in the city. So the ladder truck is where you're able to attack a fire from the air. So buildings like the Selgin buildings or the schools or Hammerhead that have expansive buildings, you can get up and above it to fight the fire that you couldn't with another engine. So I'll turn it over to Chief to kind of talk about his evaluation of the fleet and his vision for that fleet moving forward, and why he recommends the purchase of a new ladder truck.
So City Manager Daly did an excellent job there. I guess where I'd like to start off is just the history of the ladder truck itself. Again, the current ladder truck is a 1987. It's a Pierce. It was purchased from City of Baraboo Fire Department. I don't know the exact year that it was purchased. It's not uncommon for communities to do this. It's the idea that there has to be some good valued life out of that. That makes this truck currently 36 years old. 36 years old, that's a long time for that truck to be in service, and it is starting to show its wear and tear. Recent response, a lot of people don't think that the ladder truck gets used very often. However, we had two out in Milford that would have been a great time to use this ladder truck. It did respond to West Grant Street earlier, or about mid part of November, for an apartment fire, a two-story apartment fire. The last aerial service, every year aerials go through an annual inspection, and they look through the aerial device. Every 5 years it goes through what's called non-destructive testing, where they test the ladder and things like that, the actual structural components. The last test was done on October 9th. There was several items that were noted as to be defects and failures. The biggest one is what's called a drift test extension cylinders. Basically what they do is they set the ladder up and they hang some weights off the end of the ladder, and over the course of time it can only drift X amount. The maximum drift that it's supposed to have is 1 inch. Ours drifted 2.25 inches. This is caused by leaking, rebuilding of cylinders, also hoses that could be leaking. So when you start looking at this ladder truck, as that inspector did, basically up and down that ladder, the hoses are weather checked, they're deteriorated. His recommendation would be a complete replacement of all of those items, yet alone rebuilding of the cylinders. Another is the outriggers. Again, we're leaking, weeping. You can see it's kind of this hose leaking, weeping fittings. Other things, the waterway, the relief valves did not open on it. So if this truck would have been in a fire and they would have had to, retract, they could have eventually blown apart the waterway that travels up. This relief valve is supposed to open, so any excessive pressure gets relieved through the relief valve. Again, this is an example of one item that was tested that actually failed on this truck. And then there's a couple other ones that go into the chassis as far as the wires are starting to rub through. This one happened to be on the starter cable. We were able to get it over to Steve's. He was able to replace it and repair it. So we're making the minor repairs and issues. The radiator is another item. What it is these trucks are a lot of times a very custom one-off. Cabs have to be removed, major components have to be removed to gain access to the way that the engine's built inside these things. So not only the cost of getting it out, getting that back in, it's the actual, you can't just go down to the radiator. This isn't a stock thing because it's 36 years old anymore. So there's deterioration on there. With that being said, over the pump test came back fine, but it's also noticing that it is some wear and tear on the pump, not coming back at the numbers as what it should be. So we talk about NFPA standards. NFPA standards is kind of the written rule, but yet the unwritten rule. NFPA is adopted by the state of Wisconsin back in, I believe it was like 2014. They adopted the NFPA 12 edition. That gets us into all the NFPA standards. NFPA does have a section in their chaptering. It's NFPA 1900. They have specific ones in there. Specific ones that really deal with this is 1901. And what that states is replacement of the vehicles. They say 15 years on a front line and 20 years into retirement, to 25 years into retirement. They go into some talk about how busy is the department. Our truck at 20 years old versus a New York fire department or a city of Milwaukee fire department is going to have a lot more different wear and tear on it than what ours currently does. So you can see that even at the 25-year range, on moderate use, we're at 36. We're 11 years over that number. What does that mean for the city of Lake Mills? That means for myself, I could be held liable. City of Lake Mills could be held liable if something were to happen to somebody that's using this ladder, somebody's being rescued by this ladder, and something were to fail, there's a liability because we know that it's in this state. How do departments get around the NFPA standards? There's really no way to get around them. There is a chapter in the book, it's NFPA 1912, I believe, that talks about vehicle refurbishment. That's talking about a vehicle that's hit its 15 years, you refurb it to extend its life out another 15 to 20 years. We're past that benchmark. There is nobody that would recommend doing a refurb on this right now simply because it's at 36 years of age. This should have already gone through a refurb and it would be nearing completion on its refurb at this time. With talking with Reliant, our sales rep over there, Jason, very knowledgeable, been with Reliant for a long time, worked for Pierce for a long time. Did ask him about refurbishment on a vehicle such as this and what would we be looking at if we were to refurb this vehicle. This vehicle would be talking about $700,000+ as a refurb itself. So you can see that we're at $700,000+ to refurb it. As they get into it, it could climb more. More than likely, it's not going to go any less because they have to take that truck all the way back down to the bare metal. The other part is that truck is also old. Again, talking about that it's 36 years of age. Those parts that are on there would have to be retrofitted with new parts. So that means refabricating, redesigning, things like that, adding to that cost, and that's where those high end cost comes into. If we did a refurb at this age, it may add 10 years of life. If it were to be done, if we wanted to elect to go that direction, you can see that that cost just doesn't come out favorable for the city at this point when they have the option to potentially go with a new one. As far as what does a ladder truck do for the citizens of Lake Mills? We're obviously starting to look and see bigger buildings. There was the talk of a potential hotel coming. Obviously that did not go through currently. However, we do have large buildings. We've got Crystal Farms, we've got Celgin, we've got potential developments that have come through the area looking to build 3, 4, 5 stories high. Those are the areas that are going to be needed where this ladder truck. Any apartment complex that you build at 2 stories or more needs a ladder truck in this community. When you have to make a rescue out of a second floor or you have to get to that rooftop on the second floor, that's where your best firefighting is going to come, is out of that ladder truck. We look at townships. Where is this going to fit into the townships? There's a lot of commercial stuff out in the townships. I can think of several corn bins that I've seen. We were just at a fire out at Daybreak in their production area this last week. That's another area. It's a large, taller structure. You need to be able to get up on those buildings and take care of the items that could happen up there. It's not only used for fire. This could also be used for an EMS. Somebody's up on top there, they have a heart attack, some other type of medical emergency, and being able to rescue them out with this ladder truck would be very advantageous for that person. So where it all really comes down to is ISO ratings. Another part is the ISO ratings. ISO ratings are, it's a rating on the insurance or the protection of this community. Does that really mean a lot to the average citizen homeowner's insurance? Not so much. But when you look at community development coming into the townships, coming into the city, that's where it's going to play a key role, is having one of these. Having it 20 miles away is not going to be the key role to lessen that ISO rating. So as you can see, this truck does affect everybody in the fire response area. It doesn't just affect the city. It affects everybody all the way around. There's multiple uses for this. One of the recommendation that I have is out of this is we are going to be downsizing one engine. Currently we have 3 engines. You can see in the capital plan there is a replacement of that engine coming up. The idea would be to utilize those funds to currently offset the costs, as Drake has already evaluated. There's other items that are in that capital planning fund that are going to be able to come down because of this ladder truck. The other part is the sell of the current 3rd engine that we have. It is a good piece. We should be able to get some good funds out of that to help cover some of these costs as well, or to offset. And people will say, well, you know, if you can sell the current used engine that we have, why can't we buy a used ladder truck? I've looked out there. There are several different companies out there, Fenton Fire, Brindle Mountain. I've made contact with Brindle Mountain. What you see out there is 2003 and older trucks. 20 years. That's the number that you're seeing. The idea would be is we could purchase one of those for, there's some pricing out there between $350,000 to $450,000, but then going back to that first number I said about a refurb at about $700,000, maybe you could get away with $500,000. The idea then is you're only then extending yourself out another 10, 15 years. So I've done the research on this. I looked at currently what we have. I personally don't like to see 3 of our main pieces of apparatus kind of all ballparked within about a 5-year span. However, this truck has already taken a price increase of nearly $100,000 since that we've started looking at this. This truck will continue to go up in value as we put it off, or if we were to put it off. There is emissions on the vehicle engines that are going to be coming out here shortly by 2025. According to the manufacturer, it's going to add anywhere between $80,000 to $100,000 additional in cost outside of just the annual price increases. So you can see this, the fire apparatus is something that's still skyrocketing. Unfortunately, we could put it off, but it's just going to lead to a higher price as we go down the road. As we looked at other vehicles and we looked at other manufacturers, nobody else can put a ladder truck in our hands for right around $1.9 to $2 million is the other trucks that I spec'd out. So you can see there's a great increase to those as well if we go with a truck later on down the road or a bigger one. This one here seems to fit all the, or I should say it checks all the boxes for what we need. It gets us the elevation. It's got a 2,000 gallon per minute pump. Brand new motor. It's going to get us around. It's got the storage availability that we need on the truck, so it handles the capacities. The nice part about it is it's not as big as the tandem axle. This is a single axle. We are a paid-on-call department, volunteer department, combination department. Our personnel does not always get out there driving on a daily basis, so having a smaller truck that's more maneuverable, fits with our smaller streets, it is advantageous for this community for a truck this size.
So just to expand on that, the debt plan, financing plan that you see in front of you, it would get a little better because there's still a $375,000 brush truck scheduled in 2026, but the chief has indicated the brush trucks won't. There was going to be 2 purchases, but we won't need to purchase a brush truck over the next 5 years, and then the sale of the engine, which he estimated at hopefully $150,000 to $200,000. And then we would operate, the ladder truck would essentially operate as one of our engines, so we would reduce the fleet by a vehicle. As he said, we can choose not to move forward with signing a purchase agreement with this company, the price is valid through until tomorrow. As he said, it has gone up. They've told us it's basically going up in price monthly. They've been holding this truck specifically for us at the chief's request while we looked at other options and brought it back to this body. So we can delay. That will come at a cost to the city, but if we don't buy this one, we would just wait until another one came available that was going to be coming on down the line, and we could take action at that point. But we anticipate that we'll see a significant increase in the cost if we do so. But the option is available. The chief can get in line basically for the next one if we don't move forward with it tonight, but that comes at a cost.
Okay, thank you, Chief Russ and Mr. Daly. Are there any questions regarding this proposal? Ms. Quidnow.
Thank you for all that information. It was a lot to process.
It is.
What I'm wondering about is I know you had mentioned that there was potential question as to how many times it's used per year. And I know you just recently came into this position, so speaking of what's happened over the last 25 years is not going to be something that's going to be easy for you. But I'm wondering if you have any data as to how often the ladder truck is used per year in, let's say, the last 10 years.
I can speak of 3 fires currently to date since my time of coming here. The reason that the ladder truck by past administration had been put off and not used has been the status of the potential repairs. Basically, it's kind of been looked at as a use as necessary. So in case if we did need it that one last time, that we would utilize it. That truck has not been put on MABUS cards to go outside of our community, from my knowledge, due to those reasons as well.
So what I'm hearing you say is that we have other resources that we have used besides this truck in order to service the community. Is that correct?
Basically, we're holding it in. It's not being used as frequently as it could be right now. Just to keep it available in the event that one of the buildings in which we need a fire truck in which to respond to, that the ladder truck is available to respond. So when we're capable of responding with another vehicle, another piece of apparatus, we choose to do so if the ladder truck is not essential for the fire department's plan of attack on fighting that fire. Because if one of the buildings that would require a fire ladder truck response to had a structure fire, the fire department wants to ensure that it is available.
Totally understand that.
If I can add some clarification on that, my model for the fire department response is that there is no need for 3 engines in this community. The idea would be is that the fire truck ladder on all structure fires here within the city of Lake Mills would be the second out vehicle. On township fires, the reason that it would not be the second out vehicle but would be the third out vehicle is because those do not have supplied water. So we have to bring a tender unit for that supplied water. So this vehicle would be going out as its secondary response on all structure fires. When you need a ladder truck gets primary placement at the fire scene. When you start bringing a lot of other vehicles in, such as neighboring communities that we utilize for MABUS and that, hoses get dropped, things get blocked up, and all of a sudden that can't be brought in. So this vehicle does need to be moved up to a quicker response. Again, that vehicle did respond to West Grant in a secondary response because it was the potential of a high life safety issue with it being a potential apartment fire and it also being 2 stories.
Okay. So over the last 25 years, I know that it's obviously a 36-year-old fire truck is going, any 36-year-old vehicle is going to be not great, but how much have we paid for repair over the course of the last, let's say, 10 years? Do you know?
I've only had the last 6 months.
I
that
know.
I've reviewed.
Apologies. I just didn't know if we had an idea of how much we would be saving in exchange for buying a new ladder truck. Does
I
that
can
make
tell you
sense?
the items that I listed off of American Test Center's inspection report.
Yeah.
This is going to be a very costly bill when you have to string the ladder out and rerun all brand-new hydraulic hoses and retrofit anything that might not be available currently.
Okay. I'm sorry, is it okay that I have follow-up questions? Thank you. So if we were not to approve a fire truck purchase, with it being out of compliance, what can be done with it?
Depends on how much liability you want me to put the city in.
I don't mean that we use it. I mean, what can we do with it? Can we sell it somewhere for parts, or how does this work?
My recommendation would be to sell it. However, our next ISO rating, you are going to take a drop, and that's going to affect your commercial business owners, and it will also affect your homeowner rates as well for insurance. And anybody that's currently protected, which includes the townships as well.
Okay,
Could you go into more detail on ISO?
yeah.
So ISO ratings, it's an international insurance standard organization, I believe is something along that line. I've been through a couple of the ISO inspections. What there's a representative that comes around. Normally it's every 3 to 5 years. All depends on the rotation that they're on. They come in, they take a look at what current fire apparatus you have, the equipment that's carried on the fire apparatus, the current staffing model that you use, the current water supply system that you have in the community. All of those items get a factor rating. It's on a number system. That number determines what your ISO rating is. There's class ISO rating number 1s. Those are your big cities, such as like a Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Basically, they're saying if a fire occurs in your house, there's going to be very, very minimal damage that's going to occur. As you go down that list, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then lower, that's where it's basically the potential of you having a fire in your house is going to have great damage. That's what your premiums are based off of, as to how much risk your house is taking. It's the same that happens to the commercial businesses in the community. Their business insurance rating is based on how much damage is potentially going to occur on the current rating system.
And the damage that is potential is based on the services that we provide.
Yes.
Okay. That does help clarify some questions that I have written down. So I appreciate the explanation of an ISO, or ISO as you say. I think that's all of the questions I have for now.
Any other questions for staff or Chief? Mr. Waters?
So I guess I understand the importance of a ladder truck and how it can benefit the community, and I guess my first question is how quickly do we need to do this?
It depends on how much money you want to save. Right now, you have the chance to potentially save. I know that the next vehicle that comes out is going to be under the new emissions, because this is already in November 2024. Right now, currently, most ladder manufacturers are speccing out anywhere between 36 to 48 months, is kind of what I've been told. All depends on the varying manufacturers that you go with. This vehicle that we're currently looking at, Pierce is the only one that builds a single axle truck that is kind of this hybrid engine ladder. So it is roughly about $500,000 less with it. And since the first time that we talked about this ladder truck, again, it went up approximately $100,000. Normally, these manufacturers will take price increases a couple times a year, potentially 3-4 times a year on a quarterly basis or triennial basis. And if I was to speak as to what the next increase is going to be, right now I can tell you from the manufacturer, from our sales rep, just the engine increase is going to be $80,000 to $100,000.
Okay, because I guess one of my concerns here is that when you're doing a $1.5 million capital expenditure, you normally see that in the budget. And we just passed a budget 2 weeks ago for 2024, and I don't think a ladder truck was even in the 5-year projection at this point. But now all of a sudden it's in front of us for an expenditure. Also, I'd like to see competitive bids. As you saw earlier tonight, I voted against one of the motions because there was not a competitive bid. It would be nice to have competitive bids in this situation, especially when we're spending $1.5 million. Municipality agreements, which was touched on in this discussion earlier. There is that debate. Does each municipality need to have a ladder truck? Is there a way to share certain equipment among the different municipalities of Jefferson County? I would hope that would be the case. Hopefully something can be worked on in that regard, and hopefully that would suffice for the insurance measures that were discussed earlier as well. And then the possibility of a used, if people are buying new trucks all of a sudden, are they using ARPA funds to buy new trucks? Will there be more used equipment available at the beginning of 2024? That's a question mark. I don't know the answer to that. But, and I did hear what you said earlier about used equipment's about 20 years old. I guess for me, I would like to take some more time to evaluate this, to be presented with one bid and told that we have to accept it tonight or it goes away. That just doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth. And I don't think it's fair to the community to be faced with that type of situation.
The chief did spec out another truck at $1.9 million with another company.
Thank you.
Currently, E1, which is Fire Service Inc. Here in town, the closest that they could get was a 95-footer tandem axle, which would come in at up in the $2 million ballpark, which is like just under at the 1.9, in between 1.9 and 2. Toyne is another one sold through Dingus Fire. They're in the the $2 million mark as well. And again, this is the only company that builds a single axle that's out there. It's made more for communities that's our size, smaller, tighter streets, items like that.
So if this doesn't get passed tonight, I'd like to see those comparables in the future.
Sure.
Okay.
I can tell you as far as the used equipment, ARPA funds have been out there now for quite a while, which you guys are all aware of. Again, the trucks that are out there in that 20-year mark. So I don't really see too many more new ones coming out. Obviously, I think the timelines for building are going to start coming down simply because there's been it really hasn't been that there's been more purchases of them. It's the worker demand at the factories and their lead times getting pushed out. The delivery times just pushed out.
Any other questions? Mr. Fields, do you have any?
Nope, I'm good. You covered everything that I was going to ask.
I've got a couple thoughts and questions, Chief Russ. I guess the first one, this may or may not be rhetorical, knowing that you've only been in command of our fire department for several months, and I appreciate that you've come in with a fresh set of eyes and looking at everything that we have, personnel and inventory and so forth, and coming forward with this recommendation. Why was this not identified sooner as a need? And I mean, I'm not just talking about like a month ago, but why haven't we seen this on a capital budget, forecast previously?
So for week one of my position here, I was basically faced with putting in a budget. I was also informed that CIP projects were also done, or that were due. I did have communications with admin here. We did talk about it. I don't know exactly where it did not get placed. However, just as Mr. Waters had asked, the idea of getting bids and those things coming forward in a timely fashion, like I said, I did meet with Toyne. Or the representative for Toyne. I did meet with Reliant, and I did meet with Fire Service Inc. on their ladder trucks that they have available. So I was attempting to get this put out there.
And I appreciate that, and I guess
Can I add comment here?
Sure.
To be fair, I think in our budget meetings, you did mention that a ladder truck maybe sneaking up on us sooner than expected, but it was not in the paperwork. But you did mention that, I believe, in the budget meeting.
Yes.
So,
Yes, and thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, so you did kind of give us a heads up about this. And I guess the reason I'm saying this may be a rhetorical question is I'm trying to understand why, the past chief, assistant chief captains maybe didn't identify this before your time in the city of Lake Mills with such an old vehicle and having some, it sounds like the concerns were there to minimize use of it or not be spending as much on repair because of the age. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I agree with Mr. Waters that it's difficult to be faced with a $1.5 million request without, really having had time to think about it, gather public input other than maybe, what people saw this being on the agenda. So that's a concern I have. So we had another line of question. We had input from the Town of Lake Mills chair, received email correspondence from him as well. So have you attempted to reach out to townships, and what is the role of towns in this decision,
I'm glad that was brought
if
up.
any?
My email is open records, and anybody can take a look at it. I'd go back to November 13th, 2023 for an email that was sent at 2:15 p.m. to all of the town chairpersons that was gathered off of their websites. Robin Utz, I'm probably massacring that, did respond back to me saying to copy in the town clerks as well. So I do know that that email did get received. However, hers was the only response that I've had. So I've asked, I've been at town meetings, I would love to have open conversations with them about the fire department and the direction I want to lead this department in. To say the least, everybody's making decisions. I see some that are paying more now for their EMS than what they could be with us, but those are directions that they have so chosen to go to. I can put the olive branch out there. The email was sent, and again, if anybody wants open records of it, they can take a look at my email at any time.
So, and I'm just specifically talking about this potential purchase. Had you had any opportunity to reach out to townships about our equipment and that the city might be looking at purchasing a new ladder truck?
The very first town of Lake Mills meeting that I went to, the representative there did ask about having these open dialogues, and that was my intent of that email, was to have these open dialogues, and again, there's been no response.
So I want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding you. So you reached out to ask for opportunity to meet or talk with them, and you haven't gotten a response to that?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
The email did not specify ladder trucks, staffing, those items. It was basically, hey, I have not, I think the only one that I haven't been to is the town of Waterloo. I've heard that this has been one of the items, is that there wants to be more dialect. I encourage that and would love to discuss the future of the department.
Thank you, and I appreciate your trying to open those lines of communication. Thank you for doing that.
Madam President?
Yes.
I also do send a quarterly report to all of the townships, quarterly budget report, and in those, make known that if any of the townships would like to meet with myself, the chief, or the treasurer at any time, that we'd be happy to set those meetings up. So far, only the town of Aztalan, they typically have a representative come down and sit down with me for a one-on-one, or and ask questions on the budget report they received and line items that they had questions on. But that's the extent of the uptake on the offer so far.
Thank you.
is that discussion related to the fire department, or?
Exclusive to the fire department.
Okay, thank you.
But, yeah, so it goes to anyone included that's currently contracted with us for fire service.
Right, thank you.
So, Chief, another, I guess, area of question I have is regarding the ladder truck versus the brush truck, and it sounds like you're taking a look at the vehicles and identifying what's the proper number of vehicles that we would need to have. So if we were to authorize this tonight, and we would be purchasing a ladder truck, but not then purchasing new brush trucks moving forward in the short term, is there a difference in the operational costs for deploying a ladder truck versus a brush truck?
So the brush truck would not be taking place of the ladder, or the ladder truck would not be taking place of the brush truck. It's going to be that third engine. Currently, the third engine is basically for secondary response here in the community, and it's also our first vehicle that goes out of town for MABUS requests. If it's for a structure fire, and that's what they've identified, versus a tender or a brush unit, depending on the type of fire it is. Operationally, what you're going to be seeing is we're cutting down one piece of apparatus out of this, so which is going to take away all the yearly recurring costs of that vehicle being serviced, pump tested, things like that. Again, with a newer vehicle, you're going to see maintenance costs being decreased because a lot of that is going to be covered under warranty for its first couple of years. So you are going to see some just plainly operational things that should trend down. I was rather surprised during my application process and interview process. I was faced with a very different lineup of vehicles until I walked onto the apparatus floor for my interview over there. You have two newer engines, and again, that's where I say, personally, yes, I think budgeting-wise, it's nice to get that vehicle further apart so you don't have the big cost vehicle items surrounding each other. However, you're at a position that if something were to occur, the city will be held liable on that 36 years. So that's where the real risk liability comes in for the community. We've talked about several different things. My history has been working together with other communities, collaborations, partnerships. It started from my days up in central Wisconsin, down to Edgerton, Wisconsin, up to Manitowoc, and now here. I do believe that there's opportunities for us to work together. However, right now, you do get points on ISO for having auto aid agreements where things normally do kind of become a little bit out of the norm is repair on vehicles. All of a sudden you're going to be looking and saying, well, geez, that town is using this vehicle X times out of a day. We're only using it here. Now all of a sudden you start looking at how do those repair costs get split out. So there are things that do come with that. However, right now, the idea behind this vehicle, and I know that when I come to you and stand up here and ask for $1.5 million for a ladder truck, it is the most expensive vehicle that you will buy as a city. There's just no way around it. I believe that the route that we've taken, looking at the different vendors where we're currently at, and again, I know that this was a short time competition bids. If we were looking at a single axle, there is only one manufacturer that can give you that competitive bid, if that's the spec that we put out there. So you have that in front of you. This is a vehicle that was in the manufacturer line that ended up floating down. Nobody's picked it up yet. It meets what our standards would be. It meets our requirements, and it comes in at a very good value currently. So I would hate to see that get pushed out, but I definitely understand it and respect it, and we can go to competitive bid again. You're more than likely going to be faced with the single one again. Used equipment, again, we're back at that 20-year frame. You're going to end up buying that vehicle. You're going to end up sticking $600,000, $700,000 back into it to get it refurbed, so that way it can last you another 15 years.
My one remaining question was actually right on that point. You had mentioned that in your research you found a used ladder truck in the 20-year-old range that would be $350,000 to $400,000. I think you said purchase price. And I didn't understand just now, it sounds like you said that would require some refurbishment in addition to the purchase price. Is that correct?
Correct, because again, that vehicle, unless it was just recently refurbed, which you're not going to find them for that cheap, they're not refurbed. The manufacturer brings them in, or excuse me, that company brings them in, they give them a once-over, they might fix some things. It's kind of like a used car going onto a used car lot. They might fix some things, but then in the end, if there's any major mechanical stuff, you're still stuck with that. That truck then would have to go to that manufacturer for refurb. We're lucky that here in Wisconsin we have Pierce, which is a home based out of Wisconsin, so it's right up the road in a sense, versus it having to go down to Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, wherever that might be from, to get that refurb. It's going to take some downtime. The other part is when you refurb a vehicle, that does not mean that it gets a new motor or a rebuilt motor or a new transmission. The driveline is still its old driveline. So if you could refurb that vehicle and next thing you know, you take it out and now you have a bad engine, a bad transmission, you're going to end up sticking that repair into it.
So the used vehicle that you looked at, any ballpark on what the refurbishment cost would be on top of the purchase price?
Yeah, I'm going based off of the recommendation from the manufacturers that do the refurb. And again, that's anywhere up between 600 to 700,000 was what I was told.
So then you're looking at, for a used ladder truck, close to $1 million to purchase and then do the refurbishment.
Yep.
Okay.
To get you 10 to 15
And
more
then you'd
years.
estimate that it would be functional for 10 to 15 years, okay. Thank you.
Madam President?
Yes, Ms. Guetta.
So I have a few more questions, and I appreciate you taking the time and standing up there. I can understand it would be a lot. You mentioned we have 3 trucks, is that correct?
Well, right currently you have 3 engines, a ladder truck, a tender, 3 brush vehicles, command car, 1 ambulance, if I didn't mention the tender, which I think I did, so tender, 2 boats.
Okay. That was more than I was anticipating writing down.
So we have 3 fire trucks plus the ladder truck.
Correct.
So, okay, thank you for clarifying. There's a lot of things I don't know, and that's one of them. What's the age of our current trucks?
I know one is like a 2019, one is, I want to say it's a 20, because those 2 were purchased, I believe, back to back. Dan, I don't know if you might remember those. I wish I would have brought Captain Halt with me. The Pierce engine, the 3rd one, I'd have to get those numbers for you. I don't want to stand up here and tell you something I don't know.
And I appreciate your authenticity in that. The reason I asked, and I'm sure it's obvious, is because I want to know, how long do we have with our current vehicles before we get to this point again? So, yes, we have a 36-year-old truck that is no longer compliant. Are there any other vehicles that we should be thinking about that in the next 10 years are going to be something that we're going to need to purchase? Also want to point out that, yes, $1.5 million for a ladder truck is expensive, but we also just purchased an ambulance. So, yeah, we know it's expensive, and the investment that the city council has made in public safety has been a pretty big chunk of change. We do see that as a priority. I don't want that to be misunderstood. Please understand, though, that this, like Mr. Waters was saying, the expediency in which we need to make this decision is a little uncomfortable. Also, oddly compared, or not compared, but information in the memo showing that we also have a library expansion to think about as well is, I'm a little bit passionate about that as well. So it's kind of, it's hard to know if we have the things that we have in order to be successful in our city. We have the trucks, we have the equipment, we have those things. The ISO part does stick out for me. But like Mr. Waters was saying, just wondering about, if ISO ratings can be accommodated because there is within 10 miles a ladder truck or something like that. You're shaking your head no, so.
You're not going to be accommodated the points for that.
Okay, so it needs to be in the municipality of which
You're going
it
to get
serves.
a portion of the points if it's outside and you have an automatic aid agreement.
Okay. All right, so as of right now, we're doing fine because we have the ladder truck, but it's out of compliance, so we really shouldn't be using the ladder truck because it's liability, that if something were to happen, we would be held liable. But we are able to use that as a means to make sure our ISO ratings are lower or higher or whatever the rating is. Is that accurate?
The interesting part about ISO is yes, you are correct.
Okay.
I don't write the rules or the standards on those.
It's very interesting. I guess we would take our own risk if we were to continue to use the defunct ladder truck.
Yeah, so I guess I'll comment. It's not my preference to have a capital budget amendment in December following approval of the capital budget either. We have a kind of a unique circumstance where we had a change in fire department leadership who had, it appears, had different opinions on when and what should be replaced at what time after review of that fleet. We took some time to evaluate whether we could find a municipality to partner with on some sort of use agreement with a ladder truck. We have not been successful so far, not that we won't continue to do so. We took some time to see if we could find a used ladder truck that would be acceptable for the department, which we weren't able to find. So with that being said, I brought it forward to the city council tonight because I thought the city council was entitled to consider this under the current pricing that's available to them for the single axle vehicle that the chief is recommending. We can wait. We don't have to decide tonight. We can wait. We could have a robust conversation at the new year. We could schedule a work session and invite the townships to comment on the fleet, to incorporate their feedback on it. Just with the understanding that the price will go up, but we can get in line for the next one. So we'll be able to obtain a ladder truck. If we pass on this one, we'll be able to obtain one. It will come later, and it will likely come at a higher cost, but we can do that. So the city council does not have to act tonight if it does not wish to. There will be options in the future. We will find ways to strategically manage increase in costs as we need to, as we would with any project that had increases in costs that we weren't expecting. We are out of compliance by NFPA standards. However, with a 36-year-old vehicle, you can ascertain that we have been out of compliance for a few years. I don't know why the ladder truck was not advocated for inclusion in the CIP in prior years, or appeared on it in prior years, and I can't speak to that. But it's something that our new fire chief has identified as a deficiency in the apparatus that we have, and has looked at how to rework that fleet to be more responsive to the needs that we have for it. So that's why it's before you tonight. Because I wanted the council to be able to consider it under the current pricing, but we can wait. The chief has indicated to me that if he had to, he understands needing to wait for the next one, so we can do that. So I want the council to be clear that not acting tonight doesn't mean that we won't get a fire truck. It means we just won't get one. We won't get this one. There will be others. We can take the time to continue looking for used vehicles as well, see if something comes up that's available. We recommend, the fire department, the fire chief recommends pursuing it now because of the favorable pricing structure. But if not, we will adapt our plans in the future to ensure that we meet the needs of the community while meeting the council's financial expectations for management of our of our debt as well as our operating expenses.
Are there any further questions or comments on this proposal?
Mrs. Crowley?
Yes, Mr. Fields?
I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm just disappointed that it's the last minute like this. We've had too many issues this way, but I do understand the cost savings. And the other thing I struggle with is the liability part of it. Because if we pass on it, at the same time, we might push out another year on this truck. Right now, this is still 7 months out. And if an issue comes up and we absolutely do need it, that's the struggle part of it. So, I don't know. I'm torn. Just hate things coming last minute like this.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. I think as I'm looking at my notes and what staff has shared with us, I think we have received an analysis of the alternatives that you considered, looking at, agreements with other municipalities, looking at a used truck, looking at different options for new trucks, and really it sounds like there's only one provider that makes the type of vehicle that we need in our community. So that kind of gets at the issue of, going out for bid. I'm also concerned about the liability piece. I'm concerned about our intergovernmental communication, and I think that I know that staff have been reaching out and trying to have those lines of communication and maybe haven't been fully successful yet, so that would have been helpful to, have more time to talk with townships, get their input. On the flip side, it's not clear to me that the towns, the towns that are part of our fire district, I'm not really clear what their role is. I mean, if the city's purchasing it, it's this body's decision-making authority. Certainly some of those costs would likely be passed on to them down the road. So I don't know that we have those numbers either to really understand, but I'm not seeing, other options that really seem viable. And I'm concerned that we'll be just faced with the same best option of buying a new truck, but it'll be a lot more expensive, in the new year. So I appreciate the length of discussion we've been having here, because I think we're all trying to be as informed as we can, about what you're asking us to approve.
If I may add,
Please.
with the intent of looking at this vehicle, I've tried to be as fiscally responsible with it as possible. This is not a very glamorous truck. This does not have a lot of extra frills or features that were built into it. This community has done in the past with the last 2 engine purchases through Reliant has been basically a stock truck. So this truck does not have really any additional bells and whistles on it, as someone might say. The other part is, as I have seen the CIP, the things that I noted was that there is an engine out there for replacement coming up, I think in year 3 or 4. I don't have it in front of me. There's also a brush truck replacement. Those 2 items there alone gets you roughly at about $1 million. With that being said, if I can pull right now, if we sell our current engine, that should grab a pretty good price, which is going to, in a sense, offset an additional. We'll say on the lenient side, if we only get $150,000, that leaves you with the remaining $350,000 to find. The current ladder truck, again, if we do sell, there is going to be some revenues that do come back to offset those. However, that gets spent throughout the community and goes back in the general fund. You can see that. I guess where I'm going with that is, over the next 5 years, even though this truck was not put into that, it takes out the other vehicles that were, and in a sense really offsets that cost to that capital improvement. The other part is, the longer we wait, the longer we push back, the higher the value of the new truck is going to be, and also the depreciation on the ones that we would be selling would also be coming into effect. So again, not only the gain delta profit that's going to be owed to the new truck, you're also going to see the decrease on the other side.
Thank you, Chief. And could you maybe clarify something that you just said? Were you talking or were you proposing to sell one of our current engines?
Yes.
And that would be kind of concurrent with or contingent on approval of
Yes.
purchasing this ladder truck, that you would propose to sell one of our current engines? And that was the number that you gave earlier, where you said 150 to 200,000?
200,000.
Okay, so I thought that was the value of our current ladder truck.
No.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
I would estimate that somewhere, the type of individual who may buy it, somebody who's doing some sort of commercial roofing, somebody who's doing some commercial tree logging type of thing where they need an aerial device that doesn't fall under the NFPA standards, that's where that truck is probably going to find a home.
Cherry
at.
picker kind of a thing,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
And I would be estimating somewhere between 20 to 40,000 on that. I could be surprised more, and I also could be surprised less, because I'm truthfully not in the business of selling used vehicles. But so my intent was to try to get us a vehicle, met the needs, fiscally responsible, kind of falls within a ballpark range of what that CPI is for the next 5 years. Or if it was even longer, I don't remember, but.
Ms. Carler?
Ms. Guadagno.
I appreciate the understanding of that there was going to be another sale or possible sale of one of our engines to come somewhat offset the 1.5 million price tag. There's just a lot of numbers and a lot of information to process verbally. And I think for me, at least, that's been some of my struggle, is not having it in black and white. I know that you probably had to put something together quickly. It sounds like it was probably done quickly, but in the future, and I'm for anyone who is ever doing anything like this, it's really helpful to have those things laid out clearly. I know there's some numbers put into the memo, and that's lovely, but that's not all of the information. So that's part of why I feel a little hesitant, because I'm trying to process all of the information that I don't understand or I have understanding of, and knowing where the money is going and how the money is going in this way or out this way. Do you understand my confusion and concern?
And I'm not the money guy.
No, I'm not either.
All I know is that the numbers that I have laid out there, again, it gets you roughly to that $300,000 mark.
Yeah.
And I can tell you one liability claim against this is going to super exceed that.
Okay.
Mr. Waters.
So it'd be nice to get an updated CIP, and of course, the financing numbers that we're looking at included the fire truck and the library portion that the city is responsible for. But it doesn't backtrack, I don't think, the items that he just described as far as pulling back a brush truck and a fire truck in the next 5 years.
The engine was removed in
Okay,
that
thank you.
in that database, and one brush truck was taken out. A second one is still in there. That would be taken out, but I will have to follow up with Ellers to remove that one as well. But they did take out the engine replacement that I think was in 27 or something like that.
Okay.
So, Mr. Daly, I have two follow-up questions for you. So one is, let's say we table this tonight. If we table this
There's no
tonight.
motion.
I know there's no, this is my question.
Okay.
Let's say we table this tonight. Did I understand you or Chief Russ to say that the specific vehicle that we have a quote for would no longer be available to us? Is that correct? That would go to some other buyer, or they would release it to someone
Correct.
else?
So it would no longer be on hold. So we assume it will get, someone else will move into that slot. It's possible they don't, but it will. It's right now they're not marketing it. They're not sharing it with others. It's on hold. So essentially, they'll build another one, it would just be, there'll be another one coming down the manufacturing line that they know we're interested in, and they'll ask us if we're interested in that one, and then we get in line again. So it's just, when they're making them, you put in your claim on it, and then you sign for it, and then ultimately purchase it upon delivery.
Okay. So unknown if the current vehicle would be, if we would have access to it any longer. If we tabled this for 2 weeks, would we be able to get a vehicle that is not subject to the new emissions requirements?
Possibly, possibly not.
So that's unknown.
Correct. But it is, if you waited 2 weeks, I would ask them to hold it still, and they may or may not, or it may or may not get picked up if they don't hold it. So it's possible that it will still be, the same decision will be available to you. It'll be at their discretion how they want to handle that. So it's possible.
But the price goes away, or the price is good through tomorrow. So if we table this for 2 weeks, there
It's
would be
not
no
guaranteed.
guarantee.
It doesn't guarantee that there will be a price increase. I just know that we're seeing price increases on a regular basis right now, just based on from where we started to now. So it's not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed to go up. There is a possibility that it does. They've held this price for us in anticipation of this meeting tonight. And we will certainly ask that they do so until the next one, unless we're delaying it further, then we would likely they would release it. But that's all an unknown. The guarantee goes away, but that doesn't mean that it will automatically increase in price.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Waters?
One more follow-up on the emissions control. If we buy the unit that does not have the new emission standards, will that go out of ISO standards sooner, quicker?
It all depends on the level of refurb that you bring it into. There's two different levels of refurb. One level of refurb is bring it up to the current standards.
Could you turn the microphone on, please?
I guess I did turn that off. My apologies. So the ISO, or the standards that are out there for emissions, I should reiterate that it doesn't necessarily fall under NFPA. NFPA is more the structural build, the use, the design, and its capabilities.
Okay.
Emissions is the federal compliance that all emissions are under. The question was asked to Manager Daly that if we pass on this one, could we get another one? This one right now would be slated to come in November of 2024. 2025 is when the new emission standards go on.
January?
January.
Okay.
So that's what I've been advised. So basically, this truck has already been assigned an engine that is in manufacture, so it is predating the 2025. As vehicles continue to be built, that engine, once that it tips that point and the new emission standards have to be in compliance, that's when those will come on in 2025, or the standard will have to be. The standard of NFPA is the design build of the truck, not the emissions.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure if we got an answer to your question, though, Mr. Waters. If I understood your question, you were saying if we buy a vehicle that doesn't meet the future emission standards, would that at some point in time be out of compliance with the future emission standards in a problematic way?
Well, I specifically asked about ISO. And
okay.
he explained that ISO is more of a mechanical than it is
Okay.
emissions, but there could be another standard where the emissions would come into play.
Okay, the emissions, that's the air pollution.
Yeah, currently
standards,
right
I assume.
now, there's nothing out there unless federal changes something that would make you take I don't know what kind of car you drive, but today we'll pretend you're driving a 1987 Buick station wagon. That would now make you meet emissions as of today. I know California has certain things out there, items like that. But to sweep that across the United States, that would have to be a federal thing. And to retro, all of those would be a pretty exorbitant amount, so.
So essentially, as long as the engine had a 2024 manufacture date on it, it would be under the 2024 emission standards. If, once it tips to the 2025 manufacture date, it has the 2025 emission standards. So it's possible that, it just depends where they are in their production schedule.
One of the things that's out there across a lot of fire departments in Manitowoc, we were really trying to push for this. We were purchasing new ambulances. We were going to be going into what's called a remount phase with our ambulances. Basically, you buy a good vehicle, you know the history of it, it's been with you forever. Then you go into, like this case, down the road, we talk about these engines that we currently have. We plan in the future that they go in for a refurb, so we extend that life out of them because we've known the vehicle from birth to when we have it. This truck also fits that model down the road, so that way in X number of years, you're not back looking at that point, a $2.8 million ladder truck, you're only looking at that refurb cost. It's kind of a model vision that I try to follow.
Mrs. Curler?
Yes, Mr. Fields.
Chief, just a follow-up question here quick. You said you're looking at expected delivery in November, which would be about a year out. In the memo here, it said that it would be a June 25th, 24 expected completion date. I guess what's the difference? Why the difference in the dates, or is there something there?
Yeah, the reason for that was I was asked by Manager Daly to go back to the manufacturer to see if we could push that truck down the line a little bit. So that way it would line up with the borrowing, and Drake can go into more detail on that. Right now, again, long build times on most trucks. Most people are buying custom things that they're having specially done. Long build times, so somebody happily jumped into the June/July delivery date so we could push it back to better meet our borrowing capacities.
So best case, we're still a year out right now.
Yes, sir.
The goal was to avoid having to do 2 bond issues. If we took delivery and needed to pay for it too early in the year, it's not going to line up with, for example, the restaurant project that we have ongoing that isn't even going to go to referendum until August. And so if we took possession and had to pay for it too early, then it would require us to do 2 separate borrowings, which comes with 2 separate issuance costs. I was looking to avoid that by taking ownership of it later in the year to minimize the chance of that. Not that it couldn't still happen, but in June, it certainly would require its own issuance, essentially.
Thank you.
A follow-up to that, I noticed in their pricing summary, there was a 100% prepayment option and a discount that came with that, and then another possible discount. Would that also be something we can take advantage of if we don't take delivery till November, that we might be able to take advantage of that discount?
We have to have the cash. I don't have the funding. We could. That's a pretty big encumbrance on our undesignated fund balance to prepay.
I was assuming the borrowing would be the source of the funds for the prepay. So, but I mean, the prepay would be just right before delivery, or is the prepay earlier?
The prepay is earlier.
Oh, okay. So that's probably not a viable option for us at that dollar.
It's just difficult. We could choose to, but it would put a heavy encumbrance on our undesignated fund balance. We'd pay ourselves back from the borrowing, but we'd have that gap from when the prepayment went out into when we did the borrowing, and the savings, I think, were only 30.
It's about just under 30,000, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It didn't seem beneficial.
Okay, Mr. Fields.
Yeah, and if you look at that, it looks like the prepay, it's less than a 2% discount, where if any cash we have right now, we're getting better interest rate than that anyway, so we'd be better off just holding cash.
Okay, good point, good point.
I guess I'd just like to finish up. Thank you guys for taking the time. Again, I know this is the largest purchase that any city ever has to take on. And I get for the positive feedback that you gave me as far as trying to bring this forward if it happens to need to come again Last thing I want to do is stand up here less than 6 months into the job and tell you that you need the largest piece of equipment. But again, I guess that's why you decided to bring me on, was to take a look at what we had and make these suggestions. And sometimes you have to make hard suggestions as well, but definitely understand. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, we don't have a motion on the table currently. Is there any further discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the purchase of the new ladder truck as presented by the chief.
Mr. Fields has made a motion. Is there a second? I'll second that. So we have a motion by Mr. Fields, second by Ms. Curler, to authorize the city manager to execute a purchase agreement for the ladder truck. Any further discussion or comments? I'd like to add one comment to some of the things that I've already said. I appreciate all the homework that you've done, Chief Russ and Mr. Daly, and I appreciate the updated financials from Ellers. I think we should all be mindful that those are, the library information, that's an assumption. We don't have any information yet about what that will ultimately cost or what the city's share will be, and it's our decision about whether we want to approve, as city share. So I just think we need to look at all of those numbers with, keeping in mind that there's some future decisions that could change that. But it's always helpful to have some kind of a picture to get a feel for what we're looking at. And I think we know that there are other things that people in our community would like us to fund that don't show up on any of our plans. And so this is a heavy lift to be thinking about doing a $1.5 million. I agree with you. This is far and away much bigger than any other piece of equipment I think that we have. So it's a significant cost. I wish we had more information earlier and had more time to deliberate about it. But I don't know what other information would help me come to a different position. So I intend to vote in favor of this tonight. Mr. Waters.
I just wanted to point out that my vote tonight is not indicative of what my future vote might be on this issue. But based on, I was going through a budget 2 weeks ago, and having a $1.5 million truck in front of us today, that's essentially why I'm voting the way I am tonight.
Ms. Curler?
Ms. Guida.
The decision to vote how I'm going to vote is based on the risk that our community is taking should we not purchase this over the course of time. It is, I am with Mr. Waters that this is unfortunate that we are looking at this right now after having passed the budget, but it is what it is. And I think that we need to make sure that our community is safe, that the people in our community have no additional costs in their insurance rates, or our businesses not finding that we have enough safety to give them good insurance rates, which then dissuades them from coming and building here. That being said, it is a big chunk of change. Not a fan, but it sounds to me like Mr. Daly has done what he can to try to prevent us from having to spend more money than what's listed here. in additional fees. So that's the information that's weighing my decision.
Mr. Fields, anything you want to chime in before we go to a roll call vote?
No, I can just reiterate what everybody else is saying. It's disappointed it comes to us like this. Agree with Mr. Waters. The only thing I see here is the liability. Even doing what we're doing here tonight, our best case is a year from now to get a vehicle. The one thing I do appreciate from the chief is by taking the other two vehicles off the capital purchase and possibly selling the ladder truck, we can cover almost 80% of our costs for this vehicle, which is huge. We're only looking at $350,000 if things go right. So I will definitely be watching that closely, and I hope this turns out appropriately. Thank you.
Any further comments or discussion? Okay, if not, can we have a roll call vote on the motion to authorize the city manager to execute a purchase agreement not to exceed $1,576,670 for acquisition of a ladder truck?
Ms. Quidnow?
Oh, I get to go first. Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
No.
Motion passes 3-1.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the discussion and the information exchange. So our last agenda item is recommendations for future agendas. Drake, do you have anything on your list for us to be expecting?
Just the outstanding items from the last meeting's referrals is on my list to bring forward, so.
Yeah, so I think there was maybe yet in December looking at ARPA funds and options for how we might
Hopefully,
spend those.
The requests are trickling in from the department heads.
Okay.
That's on their task sheets. I'll have a memo on the options for evaluating our city contractors. Those are the two main ones.
Thank you. And do you anticipate that we'll be having a meeting on January 2nd of 2024?
No.
Okay. So that meeting we can plan on that meeting being canceled, the first meeting in January. So we'll have a meeting in 2 weeks, and then the third Tuesday of January would be our next meeting. Okay. Anything else from council members as far as future agendas? Okay, if not, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Thank you.